Jashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Rukmini Dwarkadish Rukmini Dwarkadish Rukmini Dwarkadish Rukmini Dwarkadish Jaya Jagana Jaya Jagana Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Goranitai, 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 Jaya Goranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Gaur Premanandi, Hayaribo, Jaya Om Vishnu Pad, Paramahansa, Paraprajaka Acharya, Asacharya, Sri Shimai. ISKCON BBT Founder, Charles Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Prabhu Om Vishnu Pad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sakho Hosh Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadvaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopada Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Brajamubhi Namanam Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Mayapur Nam Ki Jai. Shri Lachal Jagannath Puri Nam Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. There was beautiful Lordship Shri Rukmini Dwarkadish Ki Jai. Shri Rukmini Devi Appearance Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to the Prabhupada. So, what time do we fast still? Just want to see if you're awake. There's no fasting on Rukmini's appearance day. She's so merciful. No fasting. So, breakfast will be served. We'll try to end on time here. On Sunday, we did a preview, you could say, of her appearance. We had a celebration festival for the benefit of the congregation, most of whom would not make it today on the actual day. And at the fire sacrifice, we read from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We started in chapter 52, verse 21. We went through the rest of that chapter, and then we read all of chapter 53. So today we're going to cover that same section, but this time we're going to be reading, because at the fire sacrifice, we only did the Sanskrit verses. So today we're going to cover that same section, but from Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, which is probably the greatest book in existence, in my opinion. Because you give somebody Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, they're not going to get that much out of it unless they're already full-on devotees. And even full-on devotees get so much more reading Prabhupada's translated and commented version of the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially that 10th canto that he did the entire thing in the form of Krishna book. Later on in the normal way, verse, translation, purports, etc., he only got up to the 13th chapter before he left. So we're very fortunate to have the entire 10th canto in the form of Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book. So, and Srila Prabhupada informed his devotees that he himself liked to hear the devotees read Krishna book to him. He asked them why. He said, because I didn't write it. I was just taking dictation from Krishna. So on festival days, Prabhupada's way of observing festivals was to hear about the particular incarnation. And especially on Janmashtami, he would just, because we were ready, looking forward not to a whole day fast. Prabhupada said, just sit down and chant or hear Krishna book, and you'll make it. And many of us, most of us here have experienced, that's a fact. If you render some service, if you chant, if you hear especially Krishna book on a fast day, you'll make it, no problem. Anyway, today there's no fast, so we will just hear the pastime of Rukmini and Krishna. So, in the Krishna book, chapter 52, we're going to start, that chapter is entitled Krishna the Ranchor. So it starts out with Krishna running away after that 18th battle with Jarasandha. But we're going to start the paragraph that says, devotees of Krishna are always eager to hear. So if you go down, I think if you make it a little smaller, but anyway, just go down, just keep going down, you'll see there's a paragraph that begins, devotees of Krishna. Find it? Yeah, here we go. All right, so we're going to read as much as we can through this chapter. If we get into the next chapter, that will be great. But I know, again, the breakfast is waiting and you have your duties to perform. So we'll try not to go too long. So devotees of Krishna are always eager to hear about the transcendental activities of the Lord. His activities of fighting, kidnapping, and running away from the battlefield are all transcendental, being on the absolute platform. And devotees take a transcendental interest in hearing of them. The pure devotee does not make the distinction that some activities of the Lord should be heard and others avoided. There is, however, a class of so-called devotees known as Prakrita Sahajiyas who are very interested in hearing about Krishna's Rasa Leela with the gopis, but not about his fighting with his enemies. They do not know that his bellicose activities and his friendly activities with the gopis are equally transcendental, being on the absolute platform. So Krishna says in the 4th chapter of the Gita that Ajopi son of Yayatma, Bhutanam Isharopi son. He says, I come not forced by Maya, but by my own sweet will and in my original body. So the same applies to Krishna's consorts like Rukmini. Rukmini did not take birth because of some past karma. Krishna comes once in a day of Brahma, and his pastimes are unfolded to attract us back to the spiritual platform, back to the spiritual way of life. So whenever he comes, his confidential devotees, beginning with Radharani, those pastimes in Vrindavan, and also these pastimes in Dwarka with Rukmini, these are eternal pastimes. So when Krishna appears, Rukmini Devi appears also, every day of Brahma. All the transcendental pastimes of Krishna described in Srimad Bhagavatam are relished by pure devotees through submissive oral reception. They do not reject even a drop. So Prabhupada hammered this point home many times, and we should know that it's a serious point that something we should take seriously then. In India, he said there are a class of people, they say they like Bal Krishna. They have deities of Bal Krishna with a laddu like this. They like Bal Krishna, but they don't like Gopi Krishna, because that's immoral. Krishna is dancing with other men's wives in the dead of night. Or some of them, they like Gopi Krishna, like he's saying here, the Sahajas, they like to hear that Ras Leela, but they don't like Arjun Krishna. Oh, that's ghastly. That's fighting on the battlefield. So, as Prabhupada just says here, pure devotees, they don't reject even a drop. Every single pastime of Krishna is relishable. Continuing, the story of Krishna's marriage with Rukmini is described as follows. The king of Vidarbha, Maharaj Bhishmaka, was very qualified and devoted. He had 5 sons and only 1 daughter. The first son was known as Rukmi, the second Rukmarta, the third Rukmabahu, the fourth Rukmakesha, and the fifth Rukmamali. The brothers had 1 young sister, Rukmini. She was beautiful and chaste and was meant to be married to Lord Krishna. Many saintly persons and sages like Narada Muni used to visit the palace of King Bhishmaka. Naturally, Rukmini had a chance to talk with them, and in this way she obtained information about Krishna. She was informed about the 6 opulences of Krishna, and simply by hearing about him, she desired to surrender herself to his lotus feet and become his wife. So, amongst the new devotees, what are Krishna's 6 opulences that are particularly listed? 6 opulences of Krishna. Fame, okay. Wealth. Beauty. Renunciation. Strength. That's 5. What's missing? Wisdom, yes. All right, everybody's paying attention. Krishna had also heard of Rukmini. She was the reservoir of all transcendental qualities: intelligence, auspicious physical features, liberal mindedness, exquisite beauty, and righteous behavior. Krishna therefore decided that she was fit to be his wife. All of the relatives of King Bhishmaka decided that Rukmini should be given in marriage to Krishna. But her elder brother Rukmini, despite the desire of the others, arranged for her marriage with Shishupal, a determined enemy of Krishna. So any of the ladies here have their elder brothers arrange their marriage? No? No, nobody does that anymore. But in those days, the parents would generally make the arrangements. But in this case, the elder brother, in spite of the fact that the father was still present, and in spite of the fact that the father wanted her to marry Krishna, he made this arrangement. And just out of attachment and sentiment, the father went along with it. When the black-eyed, beautiful Rukmini heard of the settlement, she immediately became very morose. However, being a king's daughter, she understood political diplomacy and decided that there was no use in simply being morose. Some steps should be taken immediately. So this is also a very, very good lesson for us. Prabhupada said devotees shouldn't be morose. If something is bringing you down, find out what it is and fix it. Devotees don't walk around in a morose mood. That's not devotional. Devotees, if something is wrong, you find out what's wrong and you fix it. After some deliberation, she decided to send a message to Krishna. And so that she might not be deceived, she selected a qualified Brahmana as her messenger. Such a qualified Brahmana is always truthful and is a devotee of Vishnu. Without delay, she sent the Brahmana to Dwarka. Reaching the gate of Dwarka, the Brahmana informed the doorkeeper of his arrival, and the doorkeeper led him to the place where Krishna was sitting on a golden throne. Since the Brahmana had the opportunity to be Rukmini's messenger, he was fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the original cause of all causes. So this is also instructive. We can see God if we serve God's servants. A Brahmana is the spiritual teacher of all the social divisions. Lord Sri Krishna, in order to teach everyone the Vedic etiquette of how to respect a Brahmana, immediately got up and offered him his throne. When the Brahmana was seated on the golden throne, Lord Sri Krishna began to worship him exactly as the demigods worship Krishna. In this way, he taught everyone that worshiping his devotee is more valuable than worshiping him. In due time, the Brahmana took his bath, accepted his meals, and lay down to rest on a bedstead completely bedecked with soft silk. As he was resting, Lord Sri Krishna silently approached and with great respect put the Brahmana's legs on his lap and began to massage them. In this way, Krishna appeared before the Brahmana and said, quote, "My dear Brahmana, I hope that you are executing the religious principles without difficulty and that your mind is always peaceful." So Krishna is showing how to greet a Brahmana or a Vaishnava. This is the inquiry. Not how much money do you have in the bank, or I want to know how is your spiritual practice going. This Prabhupada also used to remind us that when Vasishtha Muni approached to ask for Lord Ram to come and help, his father Dasarath Maharaj said something similar. He said, "Ayishtang yattat punar janma jayaya." he asked the Brahmana, Vashishta Muni, how are you doing in your attempt to conquer over birth and death? So again, this is how you approach saintly persons, not, about anything mundane. Different classes of people in a social system are engaged in various professions, and when one inquires as to the well-being of a particular person, he should do so on the basis of that person's occupation. Therefore, when one inquires as to the welfare of a Brahmana, the questions should be worded according to his condition of life, so as not to disturb him. A peaceful mind is the basis for becoming truthful, clean, equipoised, self-controlled, and tolerant. Thus, by attaining knowledge and knowing its practical application in life, one becomes convinced about the absolute truth. The Brahmana knew Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and still he accepted the respectful service of the Lord on the grounds of Vedic social convention. Lord Sri Krishna was playing just like a human being because he belonged to the Kshatriya division of the social system and was a young boy. It was his duty to show respect to such a Brahmana. Lord Krishna continued, quote, O best of all the Brahmanas, you should always remain satisfied. For if a Brahmana is always self-satisfied, he will not deviate from his prescribed duties, and simply by sticking to one's prescribed duties, everyone, especially a Brahmana, can attain the highest perfection of all desires. Even if a person is as opulent as the king of heaven, Indra, if he is not satisfied, he inevitably has to transmigrate from one planet to another. Such a person can never be happy under any circumstances. But if one's mind is satisfied, even if he is bereft of all possessions, he can be happy living anywhere. End of quote. So this is a test, how we can test ourselves. I heard a lecture recently, Prabhu, saying that we're making Brahmanas, but if you claim to be a Brahmana, then you have to see, do you have the qualities of a Brahmana? You have to test yourself. Not just that you got the sacred thread and no business finished. You have to test yourself. So this is one test of whether we are Brahminical or not. Are we satisfied in all circumstances? Or do we get easily disturbed? This is happening, that's wrong, oh, please fix that. Yes, not that you don't see things that are wrong, but you are not disturbed in your practice, you're not disturbed in your prescribed duties. This instruction of Krishna to the Brahmana is very significant. The purport is that a true Brahmana should not be disturbed in any situation. In this modern age, Kali Yuga, the so-called Brahmanas have accepted the abominable position of Shudras, or less, and still want to pass as qualified Brahmanas. Actually, a qualified Brahmana always sticks to his own duties and never accepts those of a Shudra or of one less than a Shudra. It is advised in the authorized scriptures that a Brahmana may, under awkward circumstances, accept the profession of a Kshatriya or even a Vaishya, but never is he to accept the profession of a Shudra. Lord Krishna declared that a Brahmana will never be disturbed by any adverse conditions if he scrupulously sticks to his religious principles. In conclusion, Lord Sri Krishna said, quote, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, for the Brahmanas are always self-satisfied and the Vaishnavas are always engaged in actual welfare activities for human society. They are the best friends of the people in general. They are free from false egoism and are always in a peaceful condition of mind. End of quote. Lord Krishna then desired to know about the rulers, Kshatriyas, in the Brahmana's kingdom, so he inquired whether the citizens of the kingdom were all happy. A king's qualification is judged by the temperament of the people in the kingdom. If they are happy in all respects, it is to be understood that the king is honest and is executing his duties rightly. Krishna said that the king in whose kingdom the citizens are happy is very dear to him. Of course, Krishna could understand that the Brahmana had come with a confidential message. Therefore he said, if you have no objection, I give you liberty to speak about your mission. Thus, being very much satisfied by these transcendental pastimes with the Lord, the Brahmana narrated the whole story of his mission in coming to see Krishna. He got out the letter Rukmini had written to Krishna and said, quote, these are the words of Princess Rukmini. My dear Krishna, O infallible and most beautiful one, Any human being who happens to hear about your transcendental form and pastimes immediately absorbs through his ears your name, fame, and qualities. Thus, all his material pangs subside, and he fixes your form in his heart. Through such transcendental love for you, he always sees you within himself, and by this process all his desires are fulfilled. Similarly, I have heard of your transcendental qualities. I may be shameless in expressing myself directly, but you have captivated me and taken my heart. You may doubt my steadiness of character, since how could an unmarried young girl like me approach you without any shame? But, my dear Mukunda, you are the supreme lion among human beings, the supreme person among persons. Any girl, though not yet having left her home, or even any woman of the highest chastity, would desire to marry you, being captivated by your unprecedented character, knowledge, opulence, and position. I know that you are the husband of the goddess of fortune and are very kind toward your devotees. Therefore, I have decided to become your eternal maidservant. My dear Lord, I dedicate my life and soul unto your lotus feet. I have selected your lordship as my husband, and I therefore request you to accept me as your wife. You are the supreme powerful, O lotus-eyed one. Now I belong to you. If that which is enjoyable for the lion to eat is taken away by the jackal, it will be a ludicrous affair. Therefore, I request you to immediately take care of me before I am taken away by Shishupal and other princes like him. My dear Lord, in my previous life I may have done public welfare work like digging wells and planting trees, or pious activities such as performing ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices and serving superiors like the spiritual master, brahmanas, and Vaishnavas. By these activities, perhaps I have pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. If this be so, then I wish that you, Lord Krishna, the brother of Lord Balaram, please come here and catch hold of my hand so that I shall not be touched by Shishupal and his company. So that was the gist of Rukmini's letter. Now, the takeaway for us is we're all servants of Rukmini. So we can't necessarily pray to get Krishna as our husband. We're not necessarily that qualified. But we can pray to be his eternal servant. This is what she's praying, that I want to be your eternal servant. So since we are servants of Rukmini Dwarkadish, Rukmini Dwarkana, we should be praying like that. That, dear Rukmini, please keep me as your eternal servant, because as long as I'm serving you, then my life is perfect. Continuing. Rukmini's marriage with Shishupal was already settled. Therefore, she suggested that Krishna kidnap her so that this might be changed. This sort of marriage in which the girl is kidnapped by force is known as Rakshasa and is practiced among Kshatriyas or men with an administrative martial spirit. Because her marriage was already arranged to take place the next day, Rukmini suggested that Krishna come there incognito to kidnap her and then fight with Shishupal and his allies like the king of Magadha. Knowing that no one could conquer Krishna, who would certainly emerge victorious, she addressed him as Ajita, the unconquerable Lord. Rukmini told Krishna not to be concerned that the fighting would take place within the palace and that many of her family members, including other women, might thus be wounded or even killed. As the king of a country thinks of diplomatic ways to achieve his object, Rukmini, being the daughter of a king, was diplomatic in suggesting how this unnecessary and undesirable killing could be avoided. She explained that it was the custom of her family to visit the temple of goddess Durga, their family deity, before a marriage. Parenthetically, Prabhupada informs us, like Kshatriya kings were mostly staunch Vaishnavas, worshipping Lord Vishnu in either the Radha Krishna or Lakshmi Narayan form. Still, for their material welfare, they used to worship goddess Durga. They never made the mistake, however, of accepting the demigods as the supreme lord on the level of Vishnu Tattva, as do some less intelligent men. End of Prabhupada's note. Continuing, to avoid the unnecessary killing of her relatives, Rukmini suggested that it would be easiest for him to kidnap her while she was either going from the palace to the temple or else returning home. She also explained to Krishna why she was anxious to marry him, even though her marriage was to take place with Shishupal, who was also qualified, being the son of a great king. Rukmini said that she did not think anyone was greater than Krishna, not even Lord Shiva, who is known as Mahadeva, the greatest of all demigods. Lord Shiva also seeks the pleasure of Lord Krishna in order to be delivered from his entanglement in the quality of ignorance within the material world. Although Lord Shiva is the greatest of all great souls, Mahatmas, he keeps on his head the purifying water of the Ganges, which emanates from a hole in this material universe made by the toe of Lord Vishnu. Lord Shiva is in charge of the material quality of ignorance, and to keep himself in a transcendental position, he always meditates on Lord Vishnu or Krishna, and always tries to purify himself with the water of the Ganges. Therefore, Rukmini knew very well that obtaining the favor of Krishna was not easy. Since even Lord Shiva must purify himself for this purpose, surely it will be difficult for Rukmini, who was only the daughter of a Kshatriya king. Thus she desired to dedicate her life to observing severe austerities and penances, such as fasting and going without bodily comforts. If it were not possible in this lifetime to gain Krishna's favor by these activities, she was prepared to die from such austerities and to undergo similar difficulties lifetime after lifetime. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that pure devotees of the Lord execute devotional service with great determination. Such determination, as exhibited by Rukmini Devi, is the only price for purchasing Krishna's favor. One should be strongly determined in Krishna consciousness, and that is the way to ultimate success. After relaying Rukmini Devi's statement to Krishna, the Brahmana said, quote, "My dear Krishna, chief of the Yadav dynasty, I have brought this confidential message for you from Rukmini. Now it is placed before you for your consideration. After due deliberation, you may act as you please. But if you want to do something, you must do it immediately. There is not much time left for action." Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 52nd chapter of Krishna, Krishna the Ranchor. So we'll do some of the next chapter. Probably won't be able to finish it, but we'll do as much as we can. So the next chapter, 53, is entitled Krishna Kidnaps Rukmini. Shri Rukmini Devi Ki Jai. After hearing Rukmini's statement, Lord Krishna was very much pleased. He immediately shook hands with the Brahmana and said, quote, "My dear Brahmana, I am very glad to hear that Rukmini is eager to marry me, since I am also eager to get her hand." So this habit of shaking hands, like everything else, comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He shakes the Brahmana's hand. He shook Brahma's hand in the beginning of creation. So shaking hands that we like to do, it seems that it's something that was born in Western culture, because in other cultures they don't do that. A lot of times they either do like that or some other way of greeting. But it comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, my dear Brahmana, I'm very glad to hear that Rukmini is eager to marry me, since I'm also eager to get her hand. My mind is always absorbed in thoughts of the daughter of Bhishmaka, and sometimes I cannot sleep at night because I'm thinking of her. I can understand that the marriage of Rukmini with Shishupal has been arranged by her elder brother in a spirit of animosity toward me. So I am determined to give a good lesson to all of these princes. Just as one extracts and uses fire after manipulating ordinary wood, after dealing with these demoniac princes, I shall bring forth Rukmini like fire from their midst. End of quote. Krishna, upon being informed of the specific date of Rukmini's marriage, was anxious to leave immediately. He asked his driver Daruka to harness the horses for his chariot and prepare them to go to the kingdom of Vidarbha. After hearing this order, the driver brought Krishna's 4 special horses. The names and descriptions of these horses are mentioned in the Padma Purana. The first one, Shaibya, was greenish. The second, Sugriva, was grayish like ice. The third, Megapushpa, was the color of a new cloud. And the last, Balahaka, was of ashen color. When the horses were yoked and the chariot was ready to go, Krishna helped the Brahmana up and gave him a seat by his side. Immediately they started from Dwaraka and within one night arrived at the province of Vidarbha. The kingdom of Dwaraka is situated in the western part of India, and Vidarbha is situated in the northern part. They are separated by a distance of not less than 1,000 miles. But the horses were so fast that they reached their destination, a town called Kundina, within one night, or at most 12 hours. King Bhishmaka was not enthusiastic about handing his daughter over to Shishupal, but he was obliged to accept the marriage settlement due to his affectionate attachment for his eldest son, who had negotiated it. As a matter of duty, the king was decorating the city for the marriage ceremony and acting in great earnestness to make it very successful. Water was sprinkled all over the streets, and the city was cleansed very nicely. Since India is situated in the tropical zone, the atmosphere is always dry. Dust always accumulates on the streets and roads, so they must be sprinkled with water at least once a day, and in big cities like Calcutta, twice a day. The roads of Kundina were arrayed with colored flags and festoons, and gates were constructed at particular crossings. The whole city was decorated very nicely. So even in the matter of decorating, we get so much information from the Shastra, from here specifically from this Krishna book, how to decorate with festoons and how to clean with water. The beauty of the city was enhanced by the inhabitants, both men and women, who were dressed in fresh, washed clothes and decorated with sandalwood pulp, pearl necklaces, and flower garlands. Incense burned everywhere, and fragrances like aguru scented the air. Now, some of us have a habit of putting out the incense all the time, but this is not supported. And somebody asked me recently for my opinion on that. Did Prabhupada do that when he was here? I never saw Prabhupada do that. As a matter of fact, when Prabhupada was here, we had more. We had smoke billowing off the altar every morning. Every morning we would do this. So yes, maybe some people are intolerant, but that doesn't give you the right to put out the incense that's been offered to the spiritual master or to the deities. Again, incense burned everywhere, and fragrances like aguru scented the air. Priests and brahmanas were sumptuously fed, and according to ritualistic ceremony, were given sufficient wealth and cows and charity. In this way, they were engaged in chanting Vedic hymns. The king's daughter, Rukmini, was exquisitely beautiful. She was very clean and had beautiful teeth. The auspicious sacred thread was tied on her wrist. She was given various types of jewelry to wear and long silken cloth to cover the upper and lower parts of her body. Learned priests gave her protection by chanting mantras from the Sama Veda, Rig Veda, and Yajur Veda. Then they chanted mantras from the Atharva Veda and offered oblations in the fire to pacify the influence of different stars. So astrology was taken into consideration. King Bhishmaka was experienced in dealing with brahmanas and priests when such ceremonies were held. He specifically honored the brahmanas by giving them large quantities of gold and silver, grain mixed with molasses, and cows decorated with cloth and ornaments. Any of our wealthy patrons listening here, this is how you should greet the devotees. Gold and silver. No, it's all right. Just chant Hare Krishna. We're happy. Dhamaghosh, Shishupal's father, executed all kinds of ritualistic performances to invoke good fortune for his son. Shishupal's father was known as Dhamaghosh due to his superior ability to cut down unregulated citizens. Dhamma means curbing down and Ghosh means famous. So he was famous for controlling the citizens. Dhamaghosh thought that if Krishna came to disturb the marriage ceremony, he would certainly cut him down with his military power. Therefore, after performing the various auspicious ceremonies, Dhamaghosh gathered his military divisions. He took many elephants garlanded with golden necklaces and many similarly decorated chariots and horses. It appeared that Dhamaghosh, along with his son and other companions, was going to Kundina not exactly to get Shishupal married, but mainly to fight. So we'll do one more paragraph. We have time here, one more. When King Bhishmaka learned that Dhamaghosh and his party were arriving, he left the city to receive them. Outside the city gate were many gardens where guests were welcome to stay. In the Vedic system of marriage, the bride's father receives the large party of the bridegroom and accommodates them in a suitable place for 2 or 3 days until the marriage ceremony is performed. The party led by Dhamaghosh contained thousands of men, among whom the prominent kings and personalities were Jarasandha, Dantavakra, Vidurata, and Paundraka. It was an open secret that Rukmini was meant to be married to Krishna, but that her elder brother Rukmi had arranged her marriage to Shishupal. There was also some whispering about a rumor that Rukmini had sent a messenger to Krishna. Therefore, the soldiers suspected that Krishna might cause a disturbance by attempting to kidnap Rukmini. Even though they were not without fear, they were all prepared to give Krishna a good fight to prevent the girl from being taken away. Sri Balaram received the news that Krishna had left for Kundina, accompanied only by a Brahmana, and that Shishupal was there with a large number of soldiers. Balaram suspected that they would attack Krishna, and thus, out of great affection for his brother, he took strong military divisions of chariots, infantry, horses, and elephants, and went to the precincts of Kundina. So, it's a regular day, not a fast day, so I will stop here. Your homework should be eagerly done, is to read the rest of this chapter. Chapter 53 of Krishna book. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Rukmini Devi ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.